After making a video announcing a relaunch of Heroes and Villains, I suddenly started feeling pressure to get an episode out, and to make it legitimate that this was going to be a real thing and not just a whim. But I wasn't sure what character to cover. I didn't want to make the first episode of my new show a rehash of something I've done before. But I feel like the podcast has already covered so many characters. There's over 200 episodes getting down and dirty with characters in comics. Well, lucky for me, my office/laundry room is fueled with stuff to inspire me while I podcast. So maybe I could find inspiration for a great video episode in there. I've got shelves filled with comics, trades, and omnibuses that have to contain a golden nugget of infotainment to launch this new bad boy in style. I also have memories of time spent with remarkable writers and original art from some of the greatest comic artists who've ever picked up a pencil. I've got toys and autographed posters. Inspiration is bound to strike, right? Let's see. I've got it! I know the perfect character to capture folks' eyes and ears. A character everyone loves but no one can get enough of. The guy everyone wants must be Paste Pot Pete. I need to jump in my workstation and see if I can build an episode around this guy. Not too long, not too short. Can I do it? Let's jump in the magic box and find out. I think a good place to start would be to find out what today's teenagers think about Paste Pot Pete.
Hey, Silas.
Yeah?
Who are your favorite Fantastic Four villains?
Well, I know Doctor Doom is one of them.
The boy just kept talking, but he wouldn't get to the point. He was missing the character we needed. So I just came out and asked him, and here's what he said.
What do you think about Paste Pot Pete?
Yeah, I remember him. He's the dude with the pot on his head.
But is he, though? Is he the dude with a pot on his head? Let's find out. Paste Pot Pete, also known as Peter Petruski, created by Jack Kirby and Stan Lee, the winningest team in comics. He first appeared in Strange Tales number 104 in 1963. Now to talk about his physical appearance, what he looks like. First off, he's an adult human male. He's average height. His height is 5 feet 10 inches tall, according to marvel.fandom.com. Also, he has a slender build. According to that same website I mentioned before, he weighs about 160 pounds. And then the costume. When it comes to the costume, he's had a few, but I always fall in love with the silliest. And luckily, we have plenty of ridiculous to choose from with Paste Pot Pete. But I've got to start with the original, which I think is the best. Now, first off, look at that hat. I mean, what's going on with that beret made not only for a circus clown, but a circus clown the size of a silverback gorilla? And that's a nod to Monsieur Mala. And I gotta say, that is the Energizer Bunny of berets. It just keeps going and going and going. There's also the ridiculously oversized collar, and I don't know if that's a scarf or an ascot or just a comically oversized and floppy bow tie. Then he's got this jumpsuit. Again, I don't know if it's baggy on purpose or if he just got the wrong size, but it looks like it doesn't really fit well. I think he has to tie strings around his ankles to keep from stepping on the legs of his pants. I'm not sure this is top-notch action wear. And then he's got some standard issue gauntlets, not really much to see there, and some nondescript boots. The footwear seems like the only part of this costume that's a proper fit. Of course, he's got his glue. And I wonder if that's a hot glue gun. I mean, the glue gun is definitely hot, but does it shoot hot glue like my wife's glue gun? Or is it room temperature glue? Or I guess it's paste if we pay attention to the name. And you can't talk about this original appearance without mentioning that jaw. I mean, look at it. I'm not here to body shame any fictional villains, but that jaw is memorable. I wonder if he's descended from the ruling classes of Europe, because that looks like a Habsburg jaw. You know, the Jay Leno jaw that is cartoonishly linked to European snobbery. But I guess he got some plastic surgery or something, because that jaw does seem to go away in his later appearances. Now, I guess I can say sadly, maybe not, he moved on to a new suit. I do have to say I think it was a pretty lateral move. I guess the primary advantage is that it internalized his paste pot. He doesn't have to carry that bucket filled with disgusting goo anymore. and I think this suit was debuted in Strange Tales number 124. He got rid of the baggy bodysuit, but maybe he went too far in the other direction, and again, I believe bodies come in all shapes and sizes, and they're all beautiful, but accentuating your ridiculously skinny limbs while wearing this incredibly bulky, rigid vest is not a fashion choice I'd recommend. And now the hose from his glue gun attaches directly to his vest, and like I've already said, no more bucket, though I think it might have been the paste pot after which he was named, so should he change his name? Well, I guess he will. We'll get to that. Heartbreakingly, you can see that he's also lost that beret of the gods, and now he's wearing, I guess, is that a helmet? I mean, it looks like it just might be a stretchy cowl that's part of his green bodysuit. Maybe it's kind of like a scuba suit base layer thing that he has going on. Next up, I like to talk about powers. It's time to talk about the powers of Paste Pot Pete. At his core, Paste Pot Pete is just an average human guy. He may have above average intelligence, but his wardrobe choices are a prime example of the difference between wisdom and intelligence. And his powers revolve all around that glue gun, though I guess maybe I should be calling it a paste pistol. It should come as no surprise that the paste pistol projects paste, but it's important to note that paste isn't just the ordinary kind of stuff like you might use to stick pieces of construction paper onto other pieces of construction paper in elementary school. It is a super paste. The adhesive dries instantly, it can adhere to nearly any surface, and it's virtually unbreakable, flame-proof, and vulnerable only to ultraviolet light. I don't know where that last one came from, but it is what it is, I suppose. He's really good with his paste pistol. In fact, I'd say he's the world's best paste pistol packer. Man, that was a tough phrase. He's so accomplished with the use of his pistol that he can trap an opponent's arm or leg, he can jam up machinery, he can build walls, and he can form paste lassos. He could even retract the stream of sticky goo, a technique which helped him to form a swing line much like SpiderMan. Now, he also flipped the script on occasion, and he fired out a lubricant just to keep people on their toes, or perhaps we should say off of them. And as much as everyone loves a good paste pistol, Paste Pot Pete did move on to other paste delivery systems. He had wrist paste shooter cannons, and eventually shot straight from the tips of his gloves. Pete also has designed boots that allow him to walk up walls by sequentially releasing a powerful glue and then a solvent. As the trapster, Petruski continued the use of his paste gun, but he expanded his repertoire with special traps. But we're not here to talk about traps, we're here focusing on paste. Weaknesses. Every hero has them, so does every villain. The main weakness, I would say, for Paste Pot Pete is name calling. When you call him Paste Pot Pete, it's a surefire way to make him angry, to make him lose his temper. Also, he is human, so guns, knives, bats, crowbars, fists, paper cuts, hangnails, etc., he's vulnerable to all that kind of stuff. Now here's the fun part. We get to talk about Paste Pot Pete's history. He was born in Gary, Indiana. Think Music Man, Ron Howard. And I gotta say, it's too bad I can't sing the song because I like that song. He studied science. I don't know where, so I'll just assume Indiana Tech in Fort Wayne, Indiana, because I think one of my cousins took classes there. He became a research scientist, and he got a fancy job in New York City. While working in his corporate lab, he invented or discovered the formula for his icky sticky paste, for which he would later be named. He patented this glue formula. I mean, his glue was super, but it wasn't super glue. It was crazy with the C, but not crazy with the K. I don't know what he called it, but he did get rich from sticking stuff together. And instead of continuing his successful career, Petruski decided to turn his skills toward a life of crime, a move he believed would be more lucrative. Now, this asks the age-old question. Does being a psychopath make people rich, or does being rich make people a psychopath? You'll have to decide that one on your own. Pete got all dressed up in those fancy duds, complete with the best beret in the business, and he went out in search of villainy. In his initial outing, with his awesomely hilarious costume and bucket of sticky goo, he successfully robbed a bank and defeated the Human Torch, the Johnny Storm version, of course, not the old one. Now, that's not too bad for your first day on the job, is it? So he was feeling a success. Perhaps he was feeling it a little too strongly, so he decided to up his evil game by moving on from bank robbery to becoming an international weapons dealer. He decided to steal a super powerful Delta cosmic missile. Johnny Storm showed up at the scene and managed to reclaim the missile, but that rascal Paste Pot Pete managed to get away by using his paste gun to grab hold of a passing commercial airliner. He rode that out over the water, then he dropped down into international waters where he just happened to have a hired boat waiting for him. Now that is a convoluted escape plan. I can't help but feel like that could have gone wrong. I mean, what if the airplane was headed to Kansas or something? Then you can't drop into the water. How did the boat know where to be? Poor Sticky Pete held a grudge against the Human Torch, so he broke another Torch enemy out of prison, a guy named the Wizard. They succeeded in framing the Torch for various petty crimes as well as acts of treason, but they fell for a trap set by the Torch when the young hero disguised himself as a wealthy British actor. Pete went back to prison, but then was released after he helped the Avengers counter Baron Zemo's Adhesive X, because when you're dealing with glue, Pete is your go-to guy. Pete had no intentions of going straight and instead focused on getting revenge against the Torch. Developing a new costume and weapons, he attacked the Torch's teammate, the Thing, and took him prisoner. This is when Paste Pot Pete's petty problems proliferated past one predominantly pyro-powered person to a quartet of quirky characters known as the Fantastic Four. And as comic books love nothing more than symmetry, Pete and Wizard found a couple of pals and made the evil Fantastic Four, a quad squad known as the Frightful Four, by adding Sandman. No, not that Sandman. No, not the other one either. Yeah, that guy. And Madame Medusa. Now, the Frightful Four was assembled as a perverse mirror image of the Fantastic Four. Reed Richards is brainy, so is the Wizard. Thing is rocks, Sandman is sand, which, when you think about it, grains of sand are just really, really, really tiny rocks. Sue Storm and Medusa, they're both, I guess they're both lady types, and you've got Human Torch and Pete. Maybe Paste is the poor man's fire, or is it the rich man's fire? Okay, I'm not saying the analogy holds up front to back, top to bottom, but you can see what they tried to do, then kind of quit trying somewhere between halfway and 3/4 of the way through. But the Frightful Four attacked the Baxter Building, and they didn't attack it at just any time. They did this during Reed and Sue's engagement party. But Alicia Masters sent for help, Johnny showed up, and Paste Pot Pete once again found himself on the losing side of the battle. After this failed team-up, Pete went solo again, and he crossed paths with his friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Spider-Man was largely incapacitated by Pete because when the web-slinger heard the name Paste Pot Pete, he burst into hysterical laughter until Johnny Storm flew in and nabbed the baddie. Later, Aaron, the Rogue Watcher, pulled Pete and the other members of the Frightful Four into the future to battle the future Fantastic Four, along with their Fantastic Force. When Aaron's plot to destroy the universe to recreate his own reality was stopped, all were returned to their appropriate time and place with no memory of what happened. During this period, Paste Pot Pete reinvented himself with a new name, the Trapster. But we're not here to talk about the Trapster, at least not now. I always like to talk about the media, the multimedia appearances, things other than comic books in which a character has appeared, and there are a few of them for Paste Pot Pete. He appeared in 1978 in the new Fantastic Four animated series titled The Frightful Four, and he was voiced by Gene Moss. Who's Gene Moss? I don't know. I don't know much about the guy. Sorry, Mr. Moss. In the 1994 Fantastic Four animated series episode, And the Wind Cries Medusa, Paste Pot Pete showed up again, this time voiced by Bo Weaver, the channel-hopping announcer on the Weird Al Show and the voice of Superman in 1988's Ruby Spears animated show. In Fantastic Four World's Greatest Heroes, an animated series episode called Frightful, featured Paste Pot Pete, voiced this time by Sam Vincent, who, according to Wikipedia, is best known for voicing Double D from Ed, Edd and Eddy. In the Superhero Squad show, he was voiced by Dave Boat, and this was in the episode called If This Be My Thanos. He also showed up in the Ultimate SpiderMan animated series, this time voiced by Steven Weber. And I think we all know Steven Weber, right? He's the narrator for the It audiobook, and he played Jack Torrance in The Shining. No, the other Shining. Yeah, that's it. And finally, a non-speaking cameo appearance of Paste Pot Pete occurred in the Avengers Assembled animated series pilot episode. Now, to the best of my knowledge, there's been no live-action appearances of Paste Pot Pete, but if Marvel is considering it, I'd like to let Kevin Feige know I look really good in a comically oversized beret. Influences are always fun to talk about. What characters may have influenced Paste Pot Pete and vice versa? Well, a paste pot is a small container of paste that is ready to use. And honestly, I guess the name's really self-explanatory. There's a brush inside, you wipe some paste on your brush, you paste stuff together. Now, this is super relevant to comics, though, because in the days before digital comic book production, if you wanted to cut and paste something, you had to actually cut it and paste it. Oftentimes, elements like speech bubbles, captions, background art, etc. were cut from the paper on which they were hand-drawn and pasted onto the primary art page so anyone can see it. And I think it's pretty obvious when you look at this picture here which parts are pasted on. So let's say somebody like Paste Pot Pete co-creator Jack Kirby, he might have had a paste pot on his work table. And if in a pinch to find inspiration, he might look at the paste pot and come up with the idea for a character. Like why in addition to Pete, we might have Inkwell Willie, Paul the Pencil, and Scissorman. Now, Spider-Man is another influence. They're both from 1963. I mean, this is prime time Marvel Silver Age. And Spider-Man swings from strings, walks on walls. Hey, his name is Peter. He even has an alliterative name, Peter Parker and Peter Petruski. So there's got to be some Spider-Man there, right? Maybe some Kirby-Ditko rivalry going on. And then, of course, the final influence. This is a character influenced by Paste Pot Pete, in my opinion, and that is Condiment King, the Batman villain, Condiment King. They have sort of the same vibe. They've got the same silliness, the same look, and he has his condiment gun that looks surprisingly like a paste pistol with the tube of goo and everything. But one difference is Condiment King is silly on purpose. I don't ever think Paste Pot Pete was. I hope you've enjoyed my first video episode of Heroes and Villains. If you want more detailed character profiles, you can check out Heroes and Villains podcast, available on all fine podcatchers. And if you like the show, be sure and subscribe so you don't miss any future installments. And also, hit the like button if you want to stroke my ego and motivate me to come out with the next episode soon. Thank you for watching, and remember, heroes are super.